Hey YouTube, it's Allie. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a very long time. Last time I uploaded a video on here was October, November. Well, long time. It was like October, November 2020. I'm here finally to entertain you guys. Okay, that was awkward. Yeah, so today I'm talking about the books that made me emotional or made me ugly cry. I have 15 books that either made me emotional, made me ugly cry, and then the ugly cry is like something happened in the book, I was bawling my eyes out, and the emotional was either the book ended or there was just major there was just either this major cliffhanger that made me so emotional, like I wanted that book now, and then the book is not out yet or it didn't come out yet. So yeah, this is what the video is about, so let's get started. The first book that made me emotional or either ugly cry was Bridget Clay by Marcus Zuzak. This is a historical fiction in Australia, I think it was. Austria. So I think it's Austria. I have to look that up because I know it looks like Austria because I can tell it's Austria because one, I'm doing an ancestry test hopefully soon. If I can afford it. And two, on Ancestry, I found out I have an ancestor that came from Austria. So, yeah. I connected to this book before I even found out I most likely have Austria blood in me. So that's very interesting. Other than that, it was emotional. I don't want to go into spoilers if you haven't read it. I know most people have read it, but I read it last year and I finished it like Thanksgiving 2020. And I zipped right through it. I zipped through Marcus Zuzak books like crazy. He's from another country. I think he's from Australia. And he's like my favorite historical fiction writer. He was maybe one of the very first I ever loved to read his books, and I'm hoping he writes more of these because I would love more historical fiction from him. He does a great job. All right, the next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This one was more like it made you think. Not only just made you think, but at the end I got so emotional because how can I explain? The main character is suffering from anxiety. It's a type of mental illness that we all of anxiety triggers have. I have anxiety. I've had it since I was little, and I could connect to the character. It was like, hey, I could connect to this girl. She's got anxiety like I do, and I read this like in 2 days and I was finished. It's a short book. Pretty short. Yeah. Thanks, John Green, for pulling my heartstrings. The next book, which is the third book, but probably whatever number it is, I don't remember the number. The next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. Okay. I was emotional because here's why. I'm not going to say who, but there was a character I liked that did die in this book, and I was disappointed. I was really disappointed in that, and that made me emotional. But I love her writing. I love her historical fiction writing, just like Marcus Zuzak. She's probably my second favorite in historical fiction, and I'm hoping to find more books from her so I can read more from her, because I heard there's more books from her. Like, there's one I want to read from her that I don't have yet it's called The Fountains of Silence. I haven't decided if I'm going to eventually buy it or I'm going to get it from my library if my library has it, because I just went back to the library last week after 15 months of not going to the library due to the pandemic. So, yeah. other than that, that one made me emotional about that character. I'm not going to say who if you're reading it, because I'm trying not to spoil as much as I can. I don't want to come out as the bad guy as much. So yeah. The next book that this one made me ugly cry, because the trilogy ended, which was Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Hong, which is the sequel to, if I can find the stinking book in this pile of mess, the sequel to the third and final book and the sequel of the To All the Boys I Loved Before. This is the first book. The second one's called P.S. I Still Love You, but this is the third and final one. And this one, at the end, once I finished it, I bawled because I had to say goodbye to the characters. I was crying. I cried for like maybe 30 minutes on my reading chair. Like, I was bawling. I was like so sad that I had to say goodbye, because I read that whole trilogy in 1 week, and I was really sad to say goodbye, because I read this book in a day. It was so good. And then out of nowhere, I finished it. I'm like, oh my god, it's over. Yeah. So, you know the feeling you have to say goodbye to the characters and you cried? I know how that feels now. I feel your pain, Jenny Han fans. I feel your pain, Lara Jean fans. I feel you. The next book that made me emotional or ugly cry, this one more made me emotional because it was a cliffhanger and I'm waiting for the sequel. It's coming out next year, which is nice. I think it's so far she's releasing in January 2022. Might change because, you know, who knows, but we'll see. Which is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Miss Sarah J. Maas. The Queen. Woo! I read this like in a week, and it was like over 800 pages long. Was it 800 or was it 700? I think Goodreads said 800, but then I thought it said 700. I don't know. It's been a year I've read it, so if once I reread this, once I get the sequel, and I'll reread this and then read the sequel, then I'll remember how many pages. But I remember reading this humongous book, but in a week, and I was like, that's it? Where's the sequel? And we're waiting 2 years for the sequel, guys. 2 years! Yeah. Team Hunt. Definitely Team Hunt. I don't care. I am Team Hunt. I don't care if you're other team or what, but I'm Team Hunt. I hope Bryce chooses Hunt. If not, Sarah J. Maas fans, we're gonna rebel. Alright. The next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I read 2 of her books in her Legend series. I gotta continue on that. I rented it from the library like a long time ago. But then things just got in my way back then. I was going through a long story. If you guys know my story in the past, I told you about my past. You guys already know, so not going to explain that again. The Kingdom of Back. Marie Lu more writes like those dystopian fantasies, and she has one called Warcross I want to read over here, but I have to get to it eventually, because I heard once you got to go to the sequel, which is Wildcard, and I don't have Wildcard, so I'm debating if I like Warcross, I can buy Wildcard, or I can get it from the library if my library has it. And that's a fantasy of video games, but mostly she writes dystopian fantasies. The Kingdom of Back, this one's more like there was magic in it, but it was more like a historical fiction retelling of magic with Mozart, but Mozart has like an older sister. So I read this back in the spring this year, and I loved it. I actually loved it. I read it in a week because I had just so much stuff going on earlier this year. Long story. So I finished it in a week. I think I gave it a 5 stars because I just loved it. It was great. Like, I loved it. It was my favorite. It was like, it was my favorite Marie Lu book so far. And I read Sky Hunter after that, and I liked Sky Hunter too. But I'm waiting for I read that on the Kindle, but I can't wait for the sequel too. But that's exciting to read soon. The sequel of Sky Hunter, and that comes out September. The next book that made me emotional, well, mentally. Let's just say I mentally died after reading this one. Really fully mentally died, which is War Storm by Victoria Aveyard, which is the sequel to Red Queen. Well, it's the fourth and final book to Red Queen. You have to read Red Queen then. And then you read Glass Sword, King's Cage, War Storm, and then you get your finale. But I would probably get those two novellas so you kind of get an idea what happens as well before like King's Cage or before Glass Sword and then after War Storm, so you kind of understand the series more, because the ones that have the sequels to all these series is called Broken Throne, and I have that one up in my on my bookshelf over here. I have 2 bookshelves, so yeah, you have to read it in order to understand it. That's my recommendation, because if not, you are going to be confused. What mentally killed me was just not only saying goodbye to the characters, just how she ended it was like, I was just like, man, I'm not going to be mentally the same. Thanks a lot, Victoria. All right. Sorry, book. Didn't mean to slam you hard. All right, so, oops, I'm dropping books, guys. That's book cruelty. Shame on me. All right, so the next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was Blood and Honey by Shelby Murren. Still, after like 2 years now or 3, I still can't say her last name right. I don't understand. I'm good with faces, but I'm horrible with last names. Like, is your last name Murren? If I ever meet him, I'll ask her, how you say your last name, Shelby? Like, I want to know, because I'm going to feel bad if I'm saying it wrong the whole time. Because I love your books. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, so Blood and Honey made me emotionally sad. And that's the sequel to her trilogy of her second book this is the first. So Blood and Honey is the sequel to Serpent and Dove and her Serpent and Dove trilogy. And I was so upset how this ended, because now I have to wait for the third. I had to wait for the third book, but the third book's coming out in late July. So I'm really excited. I'm hoping I can get it, so I know what happens. I really want to know. So, yeah, if you don't know what Serpent and Dove is, you must be living under a rock. It's about this, like I said, you know this. If you have seen my other book before where I explained it, it's about a witch hunter and a witch who end up getting married. And secretly, the witch character is a witch and is not telling the witch hunter, because the witch hunter knows he hunts witches for a living. And if he finds out he finds out she's a witch, she doesn't want to know what happens. So it's interesting, guys. It is interesting. Get on it. All right, the next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which is the final book in her trilogy, The Cruel Prince, which is the Folk of the Air trilogy. I liked The Queen of Nothing because I liked the end. I liked how things wrapped up. But I was sad because I was first thinking, man, I'm not going to see Jude anymore or Carden. But then we saw Carden in the novella after you read this one called How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories. That was really good. I read that in 4 hours. Within 4 hours. And that was good. And I read this in a day. I believe it was a day. The character I loved was Carden. Like, I had a crush on him. Woo! The character I hated was Taryn. Taryn can choke. So, yeah. That's my little event for the Folk of the Air trilogy. This book made me ugly cry. I'm sure you won't be surprised. It's another John Green book. Looking for Alaska. Yeah, he's good at pulling our heartstrings, huh? Huh, guys? Yes. John Green, if you're watching this, you're pulling my heartstrings, man. You're pulling my heartstrings. Alright. Looking for Alaska was really... I really liked it. I was just sad how things ended up, and I just bawled for like 20-30 minutes because I was just like, and I had to eat dinner, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm hungry anymore. Thanks a lot, John Green. But then I just ate because it was for my own good. It was for my own good. The next book that made me emotional or ugly cry, kind of made me ugly, basically made me ugly cry for like 20 minutes, was Five Dark Fates by Kendara Blake, which is the finale of her series of the 3 Dark Crowns. I loved this series. Like, I remember getting into it and I just fell in love, and I think it was originally supposed to be a duology, but then they renewed it for 4 books. And I was like, oh, sweet. We get to see more of the triplets fight against each other for the throne. It's so exciting. So it was like, who wins? Who wins? Who wins? You find out, but I'm not saying who. No spoilers. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that series. And the next book that made me emotional or ugly cry, Crooked Kingdom by Leah Bardugo, which is the sequel and finale of the duology of Six of Crows. Yeah, I loved this duology so much. You think Shadow and Bone's good? Oh, I loved this duology so much. Like, I have her King of Scars for the first book and her Kings of Scars duology. I don't have Rule of Wolves yet. Right now, I was going to save money, but my birthday's in like 2.5 months, so I'm just gonna wait and see if I get it for my birthday. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because I really want to know what happens. But yeah, this is probably my favorite duology out of the Grishaverse by Leah Bardugo. But the sequel, though, was probably my main favorite. Yeah, I really loved it so much. The next book that made me emotional or ugly cry was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, which is the third book in her third book in the trilogy of her A Corner of Thorns and Roses trilogy, which is also known as ACOTAR. There's a spin-off on it too. I read the spin-off. I loved it. And A Corner of Wings and Ruin was like, I was reading the tragic part of the story in my parents' house. And I was just like, wait, what? And I'm just like, don't cry, don't cry. Your parents are going to think you're weird, obsessed with the book. And I'm just like, wait, this is what happened to the character? And I'm like, this is awkward. So, yeah. I was reading this in my parents' house, and I was zipping like through it, and something happened to the character I loved for like, who knows how long, and I was like, you don't have waterproof mascara on. And 2, you're at your parents' house, you're gonna think, they're gonna think someone punched you in the eyeballs after you cried, and 2, they're gonna think you're weird that you're crying over a book, because that's just how they react to things, how they think I am. So yeah, that was interesting. The book that made me ugly cry I read this in a week, and it's so huge I can't hold it that long, so I'm going to hold it for a short time and grab the first book of the series. It's the final book in her series called Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. All of these Sarah J. Maas books, man, Sarah J. Maas, I swear, what are you doing to our hearts? What are you doing? Yeah, Kingdom of Ash, once I finished this book, I was bawling. I was crying and tearing up. Like, and then too, that's the final book in her Throne of Glass series. This is kind of like a mixture of Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. So if you're a Game of Thrones and Hunger Games fan and you don't know what Throne of Glass is, you're really living under a rock, guys. Check it out. Come on. Check this series out. You're missing out. The last book that made me emotional ugly cry, this one really made me ugly cry, and I read it in 5 days and at over 500 pages. It's a historical fiction, and it's The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Oh my gosh, this book is basically takes place in Germany. I think it's Germany. And it's like, you know, it was, how do I explain? It was narrated, it was basically, you hear the narration in the story, and it's narrated by death. And you just know what's gonna happen, like, at the end of the story, and you can't stop it. And once you finish the book, you are in tears for who knows how long. I think I cried about this book for an hour. I was so upset. An hour, I think it was like 1 or 2 hours, because I was so upset how it ended. Like, it was like I knew it was going to happen because the way the book was being narrated by death, but I was just really sad what happened. So, other than that, if you haven't read The Book Thief, read The Book Thief. Those are my books that have made me emotional or ugly cry. Thank you for joining. I will see you next time. Other than that, stay safe and have a great summer.